So Ryan Wanamaker is the Farm and Garden Director at Camp Stevens. I've known Ryan and worked with him through some events at Camp Stevens. Camp Stevens has a wonderful garden program, and they bring in so many wonderful aspects to sustainability, and they incorporate that into their programming. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Ryan in. Are you with us, Ryan?
Can you hear me?
Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Danny. And hello, everybody. I am Ryan Wanamaker. I'm the Farm and Garden Director at Camp Stevens. And so, yeah, we're up here in the sticks in the mountains outside of San Diego with some internet challenges. We're internet challenged. So, yeah, I'm on the phone right now, but it seems like things are clicking. And I just wanted to say really quick, I caught the tail end of Carrie's presentation right there, and I wish I had heard that like 10 years ago. I feel like we've just been like kind of flailing to end up where we are. But on the other hand, it's super validating to hear all of that insight there and how much of that stuff we've learned the hard way. And so I hope this helps people. So I think, yeah, we're going to show a little video that we just threw together this week, profiling our compost and the systems of it and the program a little bit of it. Is there anything else, Danny?
No, I think that's great. I do want to mention that Camp Stevens was one of the founding members of Green Camp's initiative, so I just want to give you all a shout out for your support through your membership. So,
hi, I'm Ryan Wanamaker. I'm the farm director here at Camp Stevens in Julian, California, in Southern California, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about composting food waste specifically, the food waste from our dining hall, and how we do that, without a lot of work and without a lot of stink and without attracting a lot of rodents, and also how we integrate that into our guests' experience and into our program. So what we have for our composting system are two 5x5 by 5 foot concrete bays that are essentially topped with a high cage of hardware cloth and a roof. And we use a lot of straw to incorporate it into our food waste when we're composting. And all those elements are important to us to keep the stench down, the rodents out, and to keep the management simple. So we designed it with our 4-foot front end loader in mind. That's our tractor. It has a 4-foot wide bucket. And that way the bucket can fit into the bays of the composting system. The bucket can raise and lower. There's retaining boards that hold the compost back, and they can be pulled out. And the doors can be removed, and the rain is kept off the pile by the roof. Food waste is really one of the nastiest things to try and compost, one of the hardest things to compost, especially with the smell, because it's often wet and it's often high in nitrogen. So introducing carbon and air into the system is really important to make a healthy compost pile that doesn't stink. And managing the moisture is also really essential to those ends. If a pile gets too wet, it's going to go anaerobic and it's going to start smelling bad. So we use straw. That's our carbon source. We really like straw because the way straw interfaces with the food in the pile. Straw introduces lots of air, and it's a high carbon material. Turning the pile is also really essential to introducing air and keeping the pile aerobic, keeping it healthy. So the ability to turn the pile easily, and for us that means turning it with a tractor, is really important. We used to turn all of our piles by hand, which is hard, long work. So being able to use the tractor, it was a big change and make it a lot easier, and also therefore less stinky. So as far as like quantity of how much material we're dealing with, we pretty much just take everything from the dining hall. Any food waste from the dining hall, we compost it. So we're probably doing around 5 to 10 yards of actual food waste a year that's coming out of our kitchen. I currently turn it about 4 times a year, and it takes me about 1 hour when I do it each time. So when all is said and done, I think that we probably end up with about 2 yards of finished compost a year. And it takes around 3 years from start to finish. But during that process, it breaks down to about 20% of its original mass. Our goal isn't to necessarily create this really high quality compost. It's really to keep food waste out of the waste stream, so it's not going into a landfill dumpster. And more importantly, again, it's for our guests and campers to interact with. So the location of our compost pile, I think, is really interesting, that we've put it in a very central place in the camp. It's close to the dining hall, it's close to the kitchen, it's close to lodges, and it's adjacent to common spaces that guests share. So it's right here in the center. And I think that's really essential, so that it's easy for us to and efficient for us to maintain the pile, and it also makes it easy for people to interact with it. Getting campers and guests involved in the process of separating their food waste, bringing it down to our composting operation, and helping to make our piles. And I think that's really important to demonstrate that there's valuable nutrients that are left in food waste. So we have some other composting systems around the camp too. Because this is a living and working community with people year-round, we have composting, like kind of just normal composting bins, and really similar, like a bale of straw near the houses where our staff live. In the lodges, sometimes our guests they have coffee grounds and tea bags and organic matter. So all of our lodges do have compost bins in them that we can then collect at the end of a weekend or at the end of a session, and incorporate that into the big composting system. To me, Camp Stevens is really about finding ways to connect our guests and our campers with each other and with the life systems of this planet, with the belief that cultivates gratitude, and gratitude is, I think, inherently regenerative. That kind of thought set us on this path about 30 years ago, and it's been a long evolution of figuring out how to do it and how to create interactions, positive interactions for our guests around compost.
All right. Well, wonderful. Well, a big thank you again to Camp Stevens. Gratitude is definitely regenerative, and so we appreciate all the time and energy that you put into this presentation for us, and I definitely feel like it's going to be a valuable opportunity for camps to be able to learn from what you've put together here. So thank you again to Camp Stevens. And then, Ryan, if you have anything else to add, I did pull up this slide that has kind of an overview of some of these items. If you want to take maybe one more minute and just finish off for us.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I actually can't see the slide right now, so I can't speak directly to that. And so if you have any specifics that you'd like me to follow up on right now, I'm happy to do that. But I did want to say, I noticed during the video, I don't talk about quantity of straw. Straw is our main carbon. So we just learned from Carrie about balancing, carbon and nitrogen in a compost pile. And straw is our main input of carbon, and we buy that, and it is a cost, but we do really like the way it introduces air and introduces carbon. So we use probably by volume about 70% straw. So when we're adding a bucket of compost, we're adding like a bucket and a half or something like that of straw. We don't measure it out like that. We just do it by eye. But then we try to spread out the food waste and kind of integrate the straw as we're layering the pile. So I think that is an important thing, because we've definitely experimented with less, 25% straw or 50%. But it seems like the most kind of no-brainer, slam dunk way to compost a lot of wet, nasty food waste is to just add a bunch of straw to it. And there certainly are alternatives, but this is the one that's been working for us. And I'd love to not spend, $7 a bale on it, but it does turn into really good organic matter that we're bringing onto our property and using on our lawns and landscaping and in our seedling mixes. We grow. I wanted to talk really quickly too about. We grow about, say, 10,000 pounds of produce a year here that goes into our kitchen and goes into our programs at the camp. And I mentioned how we're not trying to raise a high quality, like a really high quality compost. I mean, vegetables and fruits to some degree, but mostly vegetables are really high demand crops, right? They need a lot of water, they need a lot of fertility. And for us, that means really good compost. And because we are trying to compost as a program element and we're trying to compost centrally, we really want to avoid those smells. And so if I was trying to make a higher quality food waste compost, I think we could. What I mean by that is like more nutrient dense. We would probably add less straw, less carbon, but then it would require more management. So we're kind of balancing that labor and ease of management and stink with kind of maybe downgrading the quality of our compost. It's still really good, humus in the end, and it's adding a lot of biology to our soils, but it isn't like the stuff that I actually buy in from a professional, composter that is just, banging fertility. And you could take something and like we're doing and kind of add more carbon to manage it easier, and then maybe in the last couple years of the finishing, you could introduce some like raw, like chicken manures or rabbit manures, probably other manures, and that stuff would mellow and break down in there, and then that would up the kind of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium levels of the finished product. But we find plenty of use for it around here as it is. So yeah, I did want to say that. The slide's up. It all looks about right. But Danny, if you have anything you want me to touch on really quick, I'd be happy to do that, or I can sign off for now and look forward to a question and answer session.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one thing's very apparent. Our presenters are very well educated and have a lot of information and ideas when it comes to compost.